before you scroll away, stop. This message is not here by chance, and if you felt pulled to it, there is a reason. Someone who loves you more deeply than they have ever admitted is staying away from you on purpose, and the painful part is this. It is not because they feel nothing. It is because they feel too much. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may explain the silence, the distance, the mixed signals, and the strange pull that never fully left your heart. There is a person who still carries your energy with them into quiet rooms, late nights, and those heavy moments when the world goes still and truth gets louder. They may look fine on the outside. They may act cold, busy, distracted, or even gone. But inside, something has not let go. Inside, your name still echoes. Inside, there is unfinished feeling, unspoken truth, and a love they tried to control but never truly escaped. And here is the part most people never understand. Some people do not run when they do not care. They run when the feeling becomes too real. They step back when the connection touches the parts of them they spent years hiding. So if this story feels familiar, listen closely. Because this is not only about love, it is about fear, it is about timing, it is about a heart that wants to return but has been fighting itself every step of the way. And what happens next may change the way you see their distance forever. There is someone in your life, or maybe someone from your past, who feels a deep and powerful attachment to you. They do not know how to explain it clearly. They do not even fully understand it themselves. They only know that being near you made something wake up inside them, and once that happened, life stopped feeling normal. You were not just another face, not just another short chapter, not just another connection that came and went. You reached a place inside them that few people ever touch. You saw something in them before they were ready to be seen. You brought calm to places in them that had only known tension. You made them feel open, and open is not a place they were taught to feel safe in. That is why their silence should not be mistaken for emptiness. Their silence is full of thoughts, full of old memories, full of words they rehearse and never send, full of fear that if they step closer, everything inside them will change, and they are right. Because this connection did change them. You made them feel exposed in the most beautiful and terrifying way. If you have ever felt like someone cared deeply but kept choosing distance, then you already know how confusing that can be. One day they feel close. The next day they fade back into shadow. One moment their energy is warm. The next, it disappears. But what if that distance is not a lack of feeling at all? What if it is the sign that the feeling became too strong for them to carry with ease? The truth is, you became a mirror for them. Not just a comfort, not just a desire, a mirror. And mirrors are not easy when someone has spent years avoiding their own reflection. In you, they saw what they wanted, what they feared, what they missed, and what they still needed to heal. You reflected their hope, but you also reflected the old pain they tried to bury. You showed them how deeply they could feel, and at the same time, you showed them how fragile they still were underneath the image they present to the world. That kind of bond is not light. It is not casual. It reaches under the surface. It shakes the walls. It opens locked rooms. And for someone who built their identity around control, distance, and self-protection, that kind of connection can feel almost unbearable. They did not expect your presence to matter this much. They did not plan for your voice to stay in their head. They did not think your absence would feel so heavy. But it did, and that is where the conflict began. The more they felt, the more they wanted to hide. The more they cared, the more they feared losing control. Stay with me here, because this next part matters. Some people step back not because the bond is weak, but because it is the strongest thing they have ever known. They go quiet because they do not know how to hold something this real without shaking. They disappear because closeness asks them to be honest, and honesty feels like standing at the edge of a cliff with no promise of safety below. A big part of their distance comes from something they rarely say out loud. Deep down, they do not feel ready. They feel unfinished. They feel flawed. They feel like you deserve a version of them that is calmer, cleaner, stronger, more healed, and more certain than the one they currently see when they look at themselves. So they replay the past, they replay mistakes, they replay conversations, they replay every moment where they think they failed, and they quietly convince themselves that stepping away is somehow better than risking damage to something that feels precious. This is why their silence often carries guilt inside it. They are not only afraid of being loved, They are afraid of hurting the one person who made love feel possible again. They worry that their old wounds will spill into this bond and ruin it. They worry that if they come close before they are ready, they will create pain where there could have been peace. So they hold back. They wait. They tell themselves they need more time, more growth, more clarity, more strength. But the longer they wait, the heavier everything becomes. Because love does not freeze just because someone is trying to avoid it. It keeps moving under the surface. It keeps building pressure. It keeps asking to be faced. And if this is touching something in you, keep listening. Because their quiet may not be rejection at all. It may be the only way they know to survive the intensity of what they feel. They are not standing far away because your presence means little. They are standing far away because your presence means too much. No matter how far they go, they do not truly leave the connection behind. They carry it into distractions, into busy days, into rooms full of noise, into conversations with other people who never feel quite the same. They try to replace the feeling, but the replacements feel thin. They try to focus elsewhere, but something keeps returning them to you. The truth keeps following them. It follows them when they are alone. It follows them when they cannot sleep. It follows them in random moments when your name enters their mind without warning and their chest tightens before they even understand why. They may act like they moved on. They may act unbothered. They may even convince others that the story is over. But inside, the bond remains active. Inside, it is still speaking. Inside, it is still pulling. And the harder they resist it, the more clearly they feel it. Because what is pushed down does not always disappear. Sometimes it grows stronger in silence. Sometimes distance does not kill love. Sometimes distance reveals just how alive it still is. That is why they feel trapped between two painful choices. If they come close, they must face vulnerability. If they stay away, they must live with longing. If they speak honestly, their whole life may change. If they remain silent, they keep carrying a sadness that never fully lifts. This is not an easy place to live in. It is a quiet battle, a hidden storm. And if you have felt their energy around you even in absence, if you have sensed there was more beneath the silence, you may not be imagining it. Some bonds keep speaking even when mouths stay closed. At night, when the world softens and there is nothing left to distract them, you return to them in the clearest way. This is when the truth gets loud. This is when the mask slips. This is when all the things they buried during the day begin to rise again. They think about messages they almost sent. They think about words they should have said. They imagine reaching out. They rehearse how it might sound. They picture your reaction. They picture your silence. They picture your warmth. Then fear enters again and the moment passes. But it never passes for long because the question always comes back. What if it is too late? What if you have moved on? What if the space that once held them in your heart is gone now? This fear torments them more than they let anyone see. They do not only miss you, they fear losing the chance to ever make things right. They fear becoming a memory in your life while you remain a living presence in theirs. And still, even with all that fear, they cannot stop hoping. They wonder if you still feel them too. They wonder if some part of you still notices the thread between you. They wonder if you still pause at certain memories. They wonder if your heart still recognizes theirs in those quiet moments when logic has nothing useful to say. If you are still here, listen closely, because this is where everything becomes clearer. Their distance is not peace. It is pressure. It is tension. It is the exhausting effort of trying not to feel what has already taken root too deeply to remove. They live inside a contradiction they do not know how to solve. They want to move toward you, yet they freeze. They want to speak, yet they stay silent. They want closeness, yet the very idea of true closeness shakes everything they built to protect themselves. To other people, this may look like confusion, pride, or indifference. But underneath it, there is often something much more painful. They learned early that feelings bring risk. Trust brings exposure. Depending on someone can end in loss. Loving openly can end in pain. So they became careful. They became guarded. They learned to shut doors before anyone could walk all the way in. Then you arrived, and without force, without effort, without trying to break them open, you reached the parts of them they thought would stay hidden forever. That is why they stepped back. Not because you did something wrong, not because the bond was false, but because what happened between you felt too real to manage with their old patterns. They keep trying to return to the version of themselves that felt safe behind walls, but that version does not fit anymore. Something changed. You changed it. And now they are stuck between the old self that knows how to hide and the deeper self that is tired of living behind emotional armor. This is why the silence feels so strange. It is not empty silence. It is crowded silence, full of restraint, full of resistance, full of longing, full of the private war between fear and truth. And that war cannot continue forever without demanding a decision. They keep saying they need the right time, the right moment, the right words, the right state of mind. They tell themselves they will return when they are stronger, when life is calmer, when they are more certain, when they have fully healed, when they can stand before you without trembling. But the truth is harder and much simpler. There is no perfect time for a heart to be honest. There is only the painful cost of waiting too long, and they are beginning to feel that cost. Every day of silence adds pressure. Every day of pretending adds weight. Every day they delay, the gap becomes more difficult to cross, not easier. They imagine coming back with full confidence, speaking clearly, looking steady, saying exactly the right thing, and somehow making sense of all the distance. But life rarely gives people that kind of clean ending. Love rarely waits for people to become flawless before asking for courage. Sometimes the only path forward is messy. Sometimes the truth comes out with shaking hands and an unsteady voice. Sometimes healing begins after honesty, not before it. And they are slowly learning this. Slowly, painfully. They are starting to see that waiting for perfect has become its own prison. They stand still, but inside they are being pushed. Something keeps nudging them toward honesty, while fear keeps pulling them back toward habit. It is exhausting. It is draining. It is the reason they seem absent while still somehow feeling present. Because even when they are physically far, part of them remains turned toward you, listening, wondering, hesitating, and feeling the pressure of a choice that can no longer be delayed forever. Under all the delay, all the pride, all the quiet, one truth has not changed. They never stopped feeling for you. The distance did not happen because the bond faded. The distance happened because the bond became stronger than they knew how to carry. It overwhelmed them. It touched old wounds. It forced them to feel their own lack of readiness. And instead of stepping forward with honesty, they stepped back with fear. But stepping back did not end the feeling. It only made them face it in another form. Now they are gathering themselves little by little. They are building courage in private. They are fighting an inner battle that nobody else fully sees. They are learning that silence does not protect love. It strains it. It weakens it. It leaves too much room for regret. There will come a moment when something inside them opens. Maybe gently. Maybe all at once. Maybe after one more sleepless night. Maybe after one more day where pretending becomes impossible. But it will come. A moment when the pain of not choosing you becomes heavier than the fear of choosing you. A moment when staying away starts to feel worse than the risk of being seen. And when that moment arrives, something changes fast. Because once the heart becomes stronger than avoidance, return becomes possible. Real return. Not halfway. Not vague. Not hidden behind excuses. Real. If this speaks to your soul, hold on to this part. What looks still on the outside may be changing deeply on the inside. Silence does not always mean the story is over. Sometimes it means the story is reaching the point where truth can no longer stay buried. Distance has forced them into a kind of inner mirror they spent years avoiding. Being away from you has not made life simpler for them. It has exposed them to themselves. It has removed the noise. It has stripped away distractions. It has shown them how much of what they called strength was actually numbness. How much of what they called independence was actually self-protection. How much of what they called control was just fear wearing a calm face. Without your presence nearby, they have had to sit with the emptiness that silence created. They have had to feel what they once kept covered. That is not a small thing. It is one of the hardest experiences a person can go through. To realize that what felt safe was not peace. It was avoidance. To realize that shutting down is not healing. It is only surviving. To realize that being alone all the time does not make pain disappear. it often makes it louder. And through this process, they have started to see you more clearly too. They see now how deeply you understood them. They see how safe your presence felt. They see how rare it was to be around someone they did not need to perform for. That realization is beautiful, but it also scares them because being truly seen means there is finally something real to lose. And when a person has spent much of life protecting themselves from loss, real love can feel more dangerous than emptiness. But they are changing. Slowly, yes. Unevenly, yes. Yet still changing. And that change matters more than appearances right now, because what is happening inside them is not shallow. It is reshaping the way they understand love, fear, honesty, and their own heart. They are beginning to understand that the true danger was never loving you. The true danger was letting fear make the choice for them. They are starting to see that the bigger loss would not be rejection. It would be silence. It would be missing the chance to speak truth because they waited too long to become someone they thought they needed to be first. They cannot build anything real while hiding behind walls. They cannot move closer while carrying old pain as if it is identity. They cannot keep pretending they do not care when caring has already changed the shape of their inner world. So little by little they are letting old patterns loosen. They are questioning beliefs they once obeyed without thinking. They are seeing that love does not have to feel like chaos to be real. It does not have to be hard to be meaningful. It does not have to be painful to be deep. In fact, part of what frightened them about you was how natural it felt, how calm, how honest, how unlike the unstable patterns they had known before. They were not only afraid that you would leave, they were afraid they would disappoint you. They were afraid you would see the parts of them they still judged harshly. They were afraid that once you saw everything, you would decide they were not enough. But what they are slowly realizing is this. You never asked for perfection. You never required them to be flawless. What mattered was presence. What mattered was truth. What mattered was willingness. And now that understanding is starting to sink in, their old reasons for staying away are losing some of their power. The heart is getting clearer. The excuses are getting weaker. Every day they remain silent. They feel the emptiness of that choice more sharply. Every morning begins with the same quiet weight. Every night ends with the same unfinished feeling. They keep discovering that distance is not giving them strength. It is draining it. The bond has not become smaller with time. It has become more defined, more undeniable. What they hoped would fade has instead deepened. And this is where the turning point begins. Because eventually a person gets tired of fighting what will not leave. Eventually, the mind gets tired of arguing with the heart. Eventually, the comfort of safety starts to feel hollow compared to the cost of never speaking. They can feel that moment getting closer now. They feel it in the way memories return more often. They feel it in the way your name appears in their thoughts without effort. They feel it in the way ordinary days suddenly feel heavy for no visible reason. They feel it in the strange pull to check, to look, to wonder, to revisit what they tried so hard to avoid. There are moments when they sense, almost without proof, that you may still be feeling them too. Moments when they think maybe the thread between you never broke. Maybe it only went quiet. Maybe it has been waiting. And that possibility gives them hope and fear at the same time. Because hope means there is still a chance. But it also means they may finally have to do what they have delayed for so long. They may finally have to step out from behind silence and face the connection as it truly is. Sooner or later, every person reaches a point where staying the same hurts more than changing. They are reaching that point now. The reasons they used to justify distance are starting to collapse. The image of being fine is getting harder to maintain. What they tried to bury is rising. What they tried to ignore is asking to be heard. They are starting to realize they were not protecting themselves by staying away. They were slowly losing parts of themselves. They were losing time. They were losing aliveness. They were losing the chance to stand in truth. In quiet moments, they find themselves whispering your name without meaning to. They reach for the phone before fear stops the movement. They replay your voice, your laugh, your warmth. They revisit unfinished conversations and imagine what honesty would have looked like if they had chosen it sooner. This does not happen once. It happens again and again. And each time it happens, the return becomes more real inside them. They imagine what it would mean to see you again, to say the words they buried, to admit they were not ready, to admit they were scared, to admit they never stopped caring. These are not light thoughts. These are the thoughts of someone approaching a threshold. And if you needed one more sign to understand the deeper meaning of their distance, it is this. People do not wrestle this hard with absence when nothing is there. They do not carry this much private grief over someone who meant little. They do not keep circling back to a bond that is dead. Something in them is still alive with you. Something is still reaching. Something is preparing. They also fear that you may have changed without them. They fear that while they were hiding, you were healing. While they were delaying, you were moving forward. While they were trying to find courage in secret, you may have stopped waiting. This thought hurts them deeply. Sometimes it hurts so much that they choose silence again because silence protects them from immediate proof. As long as they do not ask, they do not have to know. As long as they do not reach out, they do not have to face the possibility that the door has closed. But avoiding that pain does not bring relief. It only stretches the suffering out longer, because their heart still asks the same questions. Do you still remember? Do you still feel anything? Do you still leave space for them in your inner world? Or have they become only a lesson, only a shadow, only a name from another chapter? These thoughts keep them restless. Yet even with all that fear, they cannot shake the sense that this bond is not ordinary. It does not behave like a simple memory. It does not fade in a clean line. It lingers, it calls, it returns in stillness, it asks for honesty, and that is why they are being changed by it. The distance that once looked like protection now feels like exile. The silence that once looked safe now feels heavy. The time they once thought would solve everything has become the very thing making truth impossible to ignore. If you are still listening, remember this. Sometimes the one who stays away is the one being transformed most by the separation. Not because absence heals them by itself, but because absence finally leaves them alone with what they feel. They are beginning to understand that truth delayed becomes pain multiplied. They are seeing that the heart cannot be silenced forever without consequences. Every time they choose distance over honesty, they feel the cost. Every time they hide what they truly feel, something inside them tightens. Every time they pretend indifference, they move farther from their own real self. And people can only live split in two for so long before something breaks open. That breaking open is getting near. You can feel it in the way the old excuses no longer sound convincing even to them. You can feel it in the way regret has started to outweigh pride. You can feel it in the way they are mentally rehearsing not how to stay away, but how to return. How to explain, how to apologize, how to stand before you without hiding behind the old masks. They know now that if they wait much longer, the regret may become permanent, and that thought is heavier than the fear of vulnerability ever was. So the movement inside them is becoming stronger. Quiet, but strong. Slow, but real. The heart is gathering courage, the silence is thinning, the distance is losing its power, and when they finally come forward, it will not be because everything became easy. It will be because avoiding the truth became impossible. That is an important difference. They are not moving toward you because fear vanished overnight. They are moving because love, regret, truth, and longing together became stronger than fear. And once that balance shifts, people do surprising things, honest things, brave things, things they once thought they would never be able to do. So if their absence has made you question everything, hear this clearly. The distance was never simple, it was never empty, it was never proof that the bond meant nothing. It was the sign of a person overwhelmed by the depth of what they felt, wrestling with old wounds, shame, timing, fear, and the terrifying beauty of being seen in a way they could not control. They stepped back because your presence mattered. They went quiet because the truth inside them was too loud. They delayed because they thought they needed to become perfect before love could be real. But life has been teaching them a harder truth. Love does not wait for perfection. Healing does not happen by hiding. Silence does not save what the heart is meant to speak. And now the version of them that kept running is getting tired. The version of them that wants truth is getting stronger. If you have felt that something was still unfinished, there may be a reason. If you have sensed movement under the stillness, there may be a reason. If your heart has struggled to close the chapter completely, there may be a reason. Because some stories do not end in the moment of separation. Some stories deepen in the quiet until one person can no longer deny what they feel. And when that day comes, it will not be halfway. It will not be careless. It will come with the weight of everything they never said, the truth of everything they tried to bury, and the honesty of a heart that finally understands what it almost lost. If this touched you, stay with this feeling. Because the silence may not last forever, and what has been growing in the dark may be much closer to the light than it seems.